Think about Marcus Aurelius pondering virtue while running an empire, but the history books from your school days, they leave out the real story. I'm talking about what actually went down after Rome's victories. Forget the battles and tactics for a second. I mean, the aftermath, the stuff that would have happened after the cameras stopped rolling, if cameras had existed back then. Let me set the scene for you. It's 272 CE, just outside Antioch. Queen Zenobia's forces have been demolished by Roman legions. Her generals? They're bracing for death. A clean soldier's death, quick and dignified. That's what they expected. What they actually got was something entirely different. Something Rome had spent centuries perfecting the art of destroying people without actually killing them. And if you happen to be a woman wearing a crown, yeah, things got significantly worse. Here's what nobody really discusses about Roman law. Once you lost, and I mean truly lost, like your city crumbled or your army surrendered, you ceased being human, legally speaking, anyway. The Romans had this whole concept called Ius Gentium, the law of nations. Sounds fancy, right? But it was just a pretty label for something brutal. Defeat transformed you into property. Didn't matter one bit if you'd been royalty the day before. Come morning, your legal status matched that of the lowliest foot soldier in your defeated forces. Actually, strike that you had even less. Because at least Roman citizens enjoyed certain protections. You couldn't publicly flog a citizen without creating a major scandal. Couldn't execute them without putting them on trial first. But foreign prisoners? Zero protections. None whatsoever. The 12 Tables, that's Rome's oldest legal code, dating back to the 5th century BCE, laid it out pretty bluntly. War prisoners belonged to the Roman state, or they got divvied up among the soldiers, like splitting plunder. And royal women, their crowns became meaningless the moment those chains clicked shut. Tacitus documented this stuff. You know Tacitus, the Roman historian who never sugarcoated anything. He wrote about what happened to defeated British royalty, noting, and these are essentially his words, that Roman officials didn't hesitate for a second before degrading people who'd previously commanded entire armies. Listen, if this material is disturbing you the way it disturbed me when I first uncovered it, if you're interested in more historical stories that textbooks conveniently skip over, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're only scratching the surface here, and believe me, this rabbit hole goes way deeper than you'd imagine. Now, things get even grimmer. Female prisoners faced additional dangers. Roman military culture, shaped by centuries of conquest, treated captured women as battle prizes. Sure, maybe some elite prisoners got decent accommodations while Rome figured out whether they were worth ransoming, but most faced immediate degradation. That distinction between war prisoner and slave? It only existed on paper. Rome wasn't satisfied with just physical domination, though. They'd mastered something far more sinister, the triumph, the grand public spectacle. Picture this scenario. You're a Roman general who just conquered an entire kingdom. You petition the Senate, asking permission to celebrate a triumph. They approve. Now, the real show begins. And what a show it was. The parade route stretched nearly 4 kilometers through Rome's streets, running from the Field of Mars, winding through the Forum, all the way up to Capitoline Hill. Thousands upon thousands of people packed the streets. This procession wasn't merely a parade, it was the ultimate demonstration of dominance. Rome showing the entire world that no matter how impressive your crown, they could reduce you to entertainment for the masses. First came musicians and performers. Then came wagons displaying paintings and models of conquered cities, showing Romans territories they'd never visit themselves. Exotic animals, from far-off lands, led along in chains. Romans absolutely loved that spectacle. It gave them a glimpse of unfamiliar worlds their legions had conquered. Then arrived the main attraction, the prisoners. Captured rulers marched at the procession's front. And here's the truly twisted aspect. They'd frequently keep them dressed in their royal clothing, complete regalia, crown and everything. Why? The contrast hit so much harder that way. Look at this powerful queen who once commanded armies, now shuffling forward in shackles while crowds jeer and celebrate her degradation. The message couldn't have been clearer. No kingdom too remote, no throne too elevated. Rome could reach anyone. This wasn't just celebration. This was psychological warfare. broadcast across the ancient world. Allies witnessed it, enemies witnessed it, and everyone received the same message, written in human suffering. For royal women, the triumph meant walking a gauntlet while thousands of eyes stripped away every fragment of dignity. The entire spectacle consumed a full day, a slow march, ensuring every spectator along the route could observe every single detail. And the worst part? These captive queens had no idea whether they'd survive until evening. Some would live, others wouldn't see sunset. That uncertainty, that was part of the torture itself. Let me tell you about Zenobia, Queen of Palmyra. This woman built an empire that stretched from Egypt all the way to Anatolia. She directly challenged Roman authority throughout the East. She was absolutely formidable. Emperor Aurelian finally crushed her forces in 272, capturing her as she attempted to flee toward Persia. 2 years later, in 274, Aurelian received his triumph. The Historia Augusta, that's a collection of imperial biographies written during the 4th century, describes what transpired in considerable detail, likely drawing from eyewitness accounts. The picture it paints? Zenobia was decorated with jewels that caught and reflected the sunlight. They transformed her into a glittering monument representing Rome's power over the wealthiest eastern kingdoms. But the chains drew the most attention. These weren't ordinary iron shackles. Zenobia walked bound in massive golden chains so heavy that guards had to march alongside her, helping bear the weight. Gold. They specifically chose gold. The very wealth she'd once controlled now turned into the instrument of her captivity. Her entire being had become a walking exhibition of conquered riches. Sources indicate she maintained remarkable composure throughout. Despite the weight, despite hours of slow marching through hostile crowds, she held herself with dignity. Perhaps that's what saved her life. Aurelian, either impressed by her bearing or simply calculating that she served his purposes better alive, spared her from the execution awaiting most captive rulers. He granted her a villa near Rome instead. Some accounts suggest she married a Roman senator, integrated into aristocratic society, her daughters marrying into noble families. Was this mercy, or just a more subtle form of humiliation? Historians continue debating that question. She spent her final decades as a living reminder, a monument to Roman power. Her presence in Italian society served as a constant demonstration that even the mightiest queens could be reduced to Roman dependence. Now let me take you back a bit. 60 CE, Britain. King Prasutagus of the Iceni dies. He'd left behind a will, a clever will, he thought. He bequeathed half his territory to Emperor Nero, half to his 2 daughters, hoping this compromise would preserve independence while satisfying Roman demands. The strategy failed catastrophically. Roman officials, led by imperial procurator Decianus Catus, completely ignored the will. They seized all Iceni lands and property, declaring the entire kingdom forfeit. And when Queen Boudica protested, this is where things get ugly. Tacitus recorded what happened next. His father-in-law had served in Britain during this period, giving him direct sources. And Tacitus, even though ancient historians typically avoided certain subjects, recorded this with unusual directness. Boudica was publicly flogged. The Romans struck her with whips. They didn't just want to inflict pain, they wanted public humiliation. Roman leather showing no mercy against royal skin. Beating a Roman citizen required legal justification and procedural safeguards. Publicly flogging a queen of an allied kingdom, that was deliberate degradation. But the Romans didn't stop there. Boudica's young daughters, certainly unmarried, endured atrocities that Tacitus found too horrifying to describe in detail. He uses sparse language conveying even his own horror events that offended Roman sensibilities about acceptable conduct. The abuse wasn't random violence. It was calculated degradation, designed to shatter the royal family and demonstrate Roman dominance. And it was public, performed before the Iceni people. The message: this is the consequence of questioning imperial authority. The strategy backfired spectacularly. Rather than crushing resistance, the abuse sparked a rebellion that nearly expelled Rome from Britain. Boudica raised an army that obliterated 3 Roman cities, including Londinium, killing tens of thousands. Tacitus preserves a speech attributed to her, declaring she's not fighting as a queen trying to preserve her kingdom. She's fighting as a woman, avenging the violation of her body and the brutal crimes against her daughters. The rebellion ended in defeat at an unidentified battlefield. Tacitus claims that when the battle was lost, Boudica refused to become a Roman trophy. She took her own life using hidden poison, choosing to die on her own terms rather than exist in chains. Her daughter's fate remains unrecorded. They disappear from historical accounts after the initial violation, their stories lost to silence. Here's something else about those triumphs. As the procession wound toward Capitoline Hill, captive rulers knew their journey might terminate at the Mamertine prison, the Tullianum in Latin. This ancient structure, built into the northeastern slope of the Capitoline, served as Rome's final stop for notable enemies. While the triumph continued to Jupiter's temple, condemned prisoners were led aside. The Tullianum had 2 levels. The upper chamber functioned as a holding cell, but the lower dungeon, accessible only through a hole in the ceiling, became the execution chamber. In darkness and filth, Rome's enemies met their end through deprivation. The process remained deliberately concealed, while crowds celebrated above. Vercingetorix, the chieftain who unified Gallic tribes against Julius Caesar after his defeat at Alesia in 52 BCE, Caesar imprisoned him for 6 years, then paraded him through Rome in the triumph of 46 BCE. The once vigorous leader had deteriorated during captivity until he appeared broken before Roman crowds. After the procession, he was led to the Tullianum and executed. Jugurtha, king of Numidia, met a similar end following Marius's triumph in 104 BCE. When lowered into the lower chamber, he went mad with terror. They lowered him into a hole in the ground, sealed it off. No food, no water. He was left in that dungeon for 6 days without a single drop of water, nothing to eat. Only silence while Rome celebrated above. Plutarch recorded his final words, asking in delirium how cold this Roman bath was. Not every captive faced immediate execution. The decision rested with the triumphant general, and later with the emperor himself. Some prisoners proved more valuable alive, permanent symbols of Roman victory. But for those marked for death, the triumph offered only temporary reprieve. You want to know what this really reveals? It shows how power functioned in the ancient world. Legal systems protecting citizens evaporated at conquest's boundary. Dignity afforded to nobility dissolved in defeat. The public flogging of Boudica, the golden chains on Zenobia, the executions following triumphs, these weren't exceptions. They were calculated policies designed to crush resistance and display power. The systematic humiliation of defeated royalty shaped the fears that kept Rome's enemies compliant for centuries. The stone walls of the Mamertine prison still stand in Rome today. You can visit them, and when you do, remember that the triumphs celebrated in ancient texts, the glory